Homogeneity, and the possibility of self-criticism in the West. Fervent self-criticism, the kind that challenges the assumptions and practices of a society, is something that is really only possible in a homogeneous society. When people share a common worldview or ideological framework, they know what is taken for granted and what can be questioned. Criticism in such a society is understood as coming from within, not as an attack on the foundational values themselves. It is a way to refine the society, not to undermine it. A clear example of this is the critique of slavery in the West. Once the Enlightenment established that morality should be based on reason rather than divine authority, the idea that all humans are equal became central. Criticizing slavery within this framework is intelligible because it targets a specific practice that is inconsistent with the principles the society already accepts. It does not challenge the society as a whole. It seeks to correct a mistake, to align practices with the values that the society has already established. The critique of racist ideology works in a similar way. The first step in condemning racism is the observation that humans cannot be strictly divided into races. Genetically, we are extremely similar. There's very little difference between any two people. This means that all humans belong to the same species and should be considered part of a single human race. If we accept that premise, then universal human rights apply to everyone. Racism becomes just logically incoherent. If equality is foundational, then discriminating against someone based on superficial differences contradicts the principles already established. In a homogeneous society, this kind of critique is constructive. It strengthens the logical consistency of the society's values rather than attacking its character. But the situation changes in heterogeneous societies. In modern European countries, for example, there are large groups of recently arrived immigrants who were not part of the historical formation of these societies. They may not share the same ideological assumptions. They might be very religious and find morality quite important, and they may have been directly affected by past injustices. In this context, the same critique of slavery or racism can be misinterpreted. It may be seen as a condemnation of Western people themselves rather than as an internal refinement of practices. In other words, when a society is heterogeneous, self-criticism can easily be read as a moral judgment on the dominant group. Part of the reason for this difference is that in homogeneous societies there is less need for condemnation. Everyone is more or less equally involved in the ideological practices being criticized. Flaws such as racism are seen as mistakes in reasoning or ideology, not as personal failings. There is no necessity to assign blame. The goal is to understand where the error occurred and how to correct it. In heterogeneous societies, however, minority groups who were not part of the original errors can use condemnation as a way to position themselves above the majority. They can demonize or criticize the dominant group to assert superiority or to get a leg up. This is ultimately destructive because it creates division and hinders learning. When a minority group points a moral finger at the majority, it does not lead to self-correction. It increases distance between groups and fosters resentment rather than understanding. The solution to this problem is to focus on mistakes and not on blame. We should examine where errors in reasoning or ideology were made and consider practical solutions to address them. Moral condemnation is unproductive. A mistake is a mistake. It should be recognized, understood, and corrected, not judged as an inherent flaw in the character of a society. In the West, where church, state, and science are separate, the idea is that errors are intellectual and structural, not moral. By concentrating on understanding mistakes and finding pragmatic solutions, societies, homogeneous or heterogeneous, can learn and improve without creating unnecessary divisions. In conclusion, self-criticism in the West is effective only when there is a shared framework of values. Homogeneity allows people to challenge practices and ideas constructively without the fear that criticism will be interpreted as a condemnation of their entire society. In heterogeneous societies, this shared understanding is weakened, and criticism can be misread as moral judgment, creating division and conflict. The key then is to approach mistakes rationally, identify where reasoning failed, correct it, and move forward, rather than assigning moral blame. This is the path to productive self-criticism, and it is a lesson that applies not only to the West, but to any society seeking to improve itself.